I had to turn it on. Okay, you guys know what I found amazing? You guys didn't know Joanne was here. The last time I lectured, she was sitting in the back, and you guys didn't even know it. I invited her. I figured that if I brought her back here, it would draw her back in. She's back in the office. That's a big start, but I still have to get her out. How did I get to this talk? What are we talking about today? Early detection of cancer. I got on this topic because of technology. Technology has advanced tremendously. And for a cost, you're able to gather information about the DNA in your body now in such a way. Someone did that? You guys did that? Okay. In such a way that detection is going to be out there sooner than it's capable now. Okay? Does everybody understand that? Here, let's do it this way. Cancer. How do we detect? And then cancer treatment. Why I brought this up to talk about today is in 1991, 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, Wednesday a.m., 8 a.m., treatment. This happened to me. At my McKnight office, I see patients Tuesday nights, Thursday nights, and all day Saturday at the advice of a doctor that I got in with 30 years ago. Long story short, I was locking the door, and as I'm walking away, Mrs. Birch came with her husband, Al. He was the turnpike commissioner, 6'8". We sit him down in the chair. He couldn't even breathe. He was wheezing. He was in respiratory distress. So we called 911, sent him to St. Francis, and I called a friend of mine, Terry Obringer, who's a pulmonologist, and he bronched him and found lung cancer. And the next morning, Dr. George Pavlik gave him his first dose of chemo at 8 a.m. So in less than 24 hours in 1991, we could diagnose and treat cancer. You can't do that today. Does everybody follow me? I got 15 patients right now. I'm waiting for tests for them to get cleared by their insurance company for us to get to the... Everybody follow me? That's why I'm bringing this up. Like, the technology is phenomenal. We can't do this. Why? What did I do that day? I practiced medicine as I was taught. I'm a physician. I'm allowed in the state of Pennsylvania to do everything I did. What happens today? I got to get approval from the insurance company. He'd have got there, the 911 would have worked out. But once he gets to the hospital, they're going to do a chest x-ray, put him in the hospital, get him tuned up, as they say. And by the time that whole process takes place, it's not the less than 24 hours that we did in 1991. Does everybody understand that? So now what we're going to do, 5 companies have blood tests, and they're going after the 12 top diseases of cancer. How would I describe it best? Most common, detectable. That's the best word. And I'll write them all out so we all understand it. I'm giving you how I got to this area to be able to discuss it with you. Because remember the one that's coming. Is it ethical for robots to replace physicians, nurses, and extenders? Is everybody with me? Okay, so we didn't pay attention. I didn't pay attention to the children, my own children. I have 6 children, and what they're doing in their lives is not what I would have done at their ages, but that's their choice to make, right? Well, they're taking care of us now. You follow me? And so all this technology is coming, guys. But how's it going to be impacted? What does that mean? What's the cost? Because everything is cost. So does that mean only the person that has the money to get these tests to find out if they have the cancer at an early stage are going to be able to get this done? And I just throw that out. What about the one over here that doesn't have any money to get these tests done, or can't afford to even go see the doctor for the tests we have now? So how I'm going to approach it is I'm going to give you the history of how we got to this point, get us to where we are today in terms of technology. And then I can already tell you, I have patients that are going to get the genetic studies done and then coming back and telling me, quote unquote, what to do. Does everybody follow me? So that's what's happening now. And again, why is it happening? We cracked the DNA. What does that mean? Your chromosomes and your DNA determine what your body's going to do throughout your lifetime. What occurs also is there's a built-in mechanism in our bodies to deal with what are called mutations, which are abnormalities within that genetic code. But we have built-in defense mechanisms called immune systems that when they see that, they go fix it. Okay, does everybody follow that concept? And we'll draw it up some more, but I had to bring all this up as an introduction so that everybody can understand why I thought it was important to understand. Do I say don't get these genetic tests? I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm telling you, and we're going to talk about what's called false negatives and false positives. What does that mean? That means they're going to get something done. They're going to say, hey, you don't have a problem. And that's false. That data was not accurate because it's never 100% accurate. Statistically, they'll throw all the statistics at you. But still, when it comes right down to it, there's false negatives and there's also false positives where you get told you have such and so cancer and you go in and get certain tests done and then it comes back that that wasn't the case. Okay? Not to say that what we're doing now is better because it's not. This is definitely new technology. My kids, here's what they do to me. Dad, so I'm square because I'm old-fashioned. That's what they tell me. And I laugh, thinking like, I'm not old-fashioned. What you guys do is not what I would do. And that's my whole point to they're taking care of us now. Like it's coming along. I have a daughter. I have 3 docs in the family now. And I see that they're working. And I look at that like, wow. Sooner or later, they're going to be telling me what to do. So that's why I'm bringing this up for everybody to pay attention to it, guys. All right, so what do we want to make sure we understand? Detection of cancers, all right? When I grew up in healthcare, early detection, what did we do? Everybody had to get a pap smear. Everybody had to get a colorectal exam. Women had to get a mammogram. And I think, again, this is when I was practicing. They started getting in with skin and melanomas. Okay? And mouth, we all knew was important. Okay? And when we put in the PAP on the same line, I put PSA or prostate. What we did back in the day, I forget the name of it. It'll come to me. But we did a rectal exam, checked to see if they had blood, and then you checked an enzyme. It'll come to me. We didn't have the PSA then. And if that enzyme was up or you felt something on the prostate, then you sent them to the urologist to get a biopsy. Okay? And similarly with the pap smear, that if you check the cervix on a regular basis, you pick up cervical cancer before it spreads into the uterus. Because once it spreads, then you're in trouble. And so that's where the pap smear came from. So the pap smear, colorectal, what does that mean? Every year, or however you guys work it out with your doctors, when you get checked, if you're getting a complete examination by the gynecologist, that includes a rectal exam, so they check to see if there's any blood in the stool. That's all. for us growing up, as I said, in healthcare, that was all we needed, okay? Similarly for the male needs to have his prostate checked. The PSA plus the prostate is through the rectum that you check it, check for the stool, for the blood. That's what we did. And I can tell you, I was on the front end. I was in hospitals in the 70s. And then, of course, I practiced starting in the late 80s and 90s. And so through that time period, I did see a tremendous amount of benefit over these screening processes. And another good story. When I started in practice, I was out on 910 in Wexford, promised that they would send me all these patients. And I sat there twiddling my thumb, there were no patients. And so I'm thinking, how do I get patients? Well, what I noticed, drug reps were coming in constantly. They were just constantly coming in. So I came up with an idea, like I was going to have a health fair. So I made the drug reps bring what they had, and we had this big health fair. I found 14 prostate cancers that day. And that's when it hit me how the cancer screening was so important. And that's once again why this is the basics. And when we say skin and mouth, you know your body. And you know if you see something there that's not normal. And I always tell my patients, you got to let me know. Sometimes they worry because if you show it to me, I'm cutting it off, you know, because you send it out to the lab. So a lot of times they won't show me because they don't want it to get cut off. But generally, you have to biopsy. That's the only way to tell what it is. And if it bothers you, it bothers me. And with the mouth, you better make sure every time you see the doctor, he or she looks in your mouth because that's where we pick stuff up. You know, so again, this was what I was, quote unquote, healthcare raised with, because this picks up the stuff that you need to find. Well, what about lung cancer? What about pancreatic cancer? All those things. Yeah, that comes from you having a relationship with your physician, knowing your body, knowing if there's things that are changed. But this generally, I watched it. I watched it from the 80s into, by 2000, we had this down as long as you were following it. And a lot of times, your managed care companies made you follow it, which is one of the things I thought managed care was pretty good at. Okay, so everybody understands. This is the healthcare screening that, quote unquote, I grew up with. All right, so what are the 12? What is this, by the way, going to be? This is a blood test. How is a blood test going to determine whether or not you are at high risk and or have the genetic marker for the cancer? Okay? So we said it, we gave it away. Genes. Genome. That's your gene. What can we find out with your genes? Answer? Everything. Okay? I think the last time, again, I don't want to beat up technology. All I want to talk about with the technology is get the information before you make decisions and make sure you think through what you're going to do with test results, okay? Because the genetic people are scientists, they're like engineers in their area, they're fantastic. But you're going to go in and get the information, and like I said, patients are coming to me saying, I got a risk for so-and-so, and I shouldn't be taking such and such medicine, and this told me this, and this told me that. Well, so what we do is we look at, you know, the information they present us, we go through it, and then I refer them out to somebody who has more experience than I do. Unfortunately, there's a lot of good places around. We currently use Cleveland Clinic because it's real simple. And generally what happens is they advise them of what this means, because this is statistics still. It's not a guaranteed exact science. But the statistic will tell you that there's a good chance this is what you have. Well, then what do you run into? Does the insurance company pay? No. Okay? So because you see in this testing that you may be at risk, what do you want to do? Scan the whole body, right? Or get a PET scan, or get something that's going to give you the information. Too much money, okay? So there's obstacles. I told you I was going to go through, so let's go through as we get into the reasons of the blood test. What happens we call head and neck cancer. What's head and neck cancer? Anything in the head, and it includes the neck, okay? What occurs with head and neck cancers, most of them are hereditary. So different types of cancers within the brain come from mutations within the brain that cause the growth of one of the billion cells that are in there. I have a younger sister that had a astrocytoma, it's called, and she was supposed to be dead in 3 years, I think they gave her. She's 30 years, she's alive. You know, remember, they always put the statistics, like there's only 5% will live that long, and she was lucky to be one of the 5%. But the point comes back to, is there some testing that we can do to pick out a brain tumor and catch a big part of the population that if this test comes back positive, then they get further testing? And the answer is, at the moment, no. What they're working on, they can cover the head and the mouth. That's why they pick up the neck. So the different cancers of the tongue or salivary glands or thyroid or parathyroid, they can pick up, but they don't pick up anything in the head. You know, specifically, you know, like the different, anything that ends in blastoma is not good. You know, so if it's a neuroblastoma, different things like that, they don't have anything yet. When we get down into the neck, like I said, they can do it. So we'll put head and neck here. Again, genetics. Genetics is what drives this. And the genetics that they find the DNA, let's say, in a cancer of the parotid gland. They'll know exactly where the gene is for the parotid gland. And it's called methylation. When they see methylation, that shows that there could be a mutation. So if it picks that up, there's a good chance that there's something brewing because the blood test shows that's positive. Now, once again, is it 100%? No. So what do? It guides you. So you go see an ear, nose, and throat doc, see your PCP, whatever it takes, have them examine you real well, and then maybe the specialist even takes a look. But once again, this is one of the 12 that they can pick up. Thyroid, generally not specific. Lung, not specific. Anything in the heart, not specific. But the DNA with the lung, they can tell from risk. What are risks? Smoking, mesotheliomas come from anybody that was exposed to asbestos. All that data goes right to the gene, so they understand the gene. So we'll put lung cancer on here as well. Coming further down in the GI tract, we find a lot of trouble over here by the liver, so we'll call it liver and biliary system. GI, we put colon, rectum, and even anus, because there's anal cancers that are actually able to be picked up. Skin, with the melanomas. Pancreas, they can find things in the pancreas. So what we have is these areas that I've identified, the scientists have found in the genetic disruption of the DNA called a mutation. They have found that they can identify these mutations in the DNA. And what they call the test, what's the initials? Multiple, it's MECD. I'll have to figure out what that means. It's they can check for multiple, I forget, it'll hit me as we're talking, guys, but it's cancer detection is the end. Multiple something or other cancer detections, and it's again, the most is 12. There's some other labs that are doing 8 and 6, and they're hitting the big ones. So what they'll do is they'll tell you, come in and get a blood test. That blood test comes back, gives us this data. Does that mean you have a cancer there? Not necessarily. What is detection for? To catch it early. What does that mean? If you have a cancer, let's pick pancreas is good. If you have a pancreatic cancer and you catch it early, now because of the technology that they have, you have a 90% chance that they can take it out and you can survive. What is early? That's the key. The only ones I've seen, happenstance. The patient goes in for a test of some type and they happen to see something. So it's very, very early. Generally, by the time we find pancreatic cancer, the patient has such bad symptoms that it's already spread, and then pancreases are tough. So again, would it be beneficial to have a blood test that you can get that would show if you're a high risk? Definitely. I'm not saying don't get it. I'm just giving you all the information of how we've gotten to this point, and then laying out, once you figure out what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, get the information, and then make sure, and I'll refer everybody, we'll tell Karen who I picked. The person is up at Cleveland Clinic. She's from Pittsburgh. She married a doctor, moved to Cleveland. How do I know she was a patient? But I'll find out all that information because you just call her. She sets everything up, including the doctors here to talk to. So I'm not saying don't get it. I'm just saying make sure when you do get it that you follow along with people that know the genetics and they understand the field. Because trust me, once this stuff comes out, everybody's going to be running to it, and then it's what I'm seeing in my office. Like I say, people will come in. They're actually seeing if you are genetically, what's the word they're using, sensitive or insensitive to the medications you're taking. So they will look, let's say you're on an ACE inhibitor, lisinopril. They'll look at everything in the tablet, and then they'll look at your genetics, and they may say, you should take a different one because you're only absorbing 85% of this one. They're not saying it doesn't work, but they give you that kind of statistic. And that's what I'm hearing from my patients already. So that's what prompted all this. I want to make sure as this comes out, because it's coming, and you hear all about it, make sure that you understand it well enough to maneuver through it. And definitely, anything you could pick up early, I'm all for early detection, but make sure you understand where you're going. Is it legitimate? Is it something that other people you know have used, or is it something that's been recommended to you? All right? Everybody follow me. So now let's go to how is this determined? Let's see what we're going to take. Let's go with the pancreas will be a good one. This is the esophagus. It comes down. You have the stomach. And then it comes over. Liver is over here. Spleen is over here. And underneath the stomach sits the pancreas. Okay? What does the pancreas do with what you swallow? So if you swallow something, does the pancreas have to do everything? And the answer is everything. What does that mean? That means if you swallow water, which is not acidic, it's going to put out something acidic to balance it. That's what I mean by the pancreas does everything. So if you eat protein, it puts out what's called chymotrypsin, which will break down the protein. If you eat sugar, that's where the insulin comes from the pancreas. So anything that goes past your lips, the pancreas deals with. Okay, so that high function and its genetic material, what they're able to do is they can determine from the function of the organ, its molecular environment. Okay? And what we found is that the DNA, it's called CF, cell fragments. If there's fragments around it, something's not right. So they can pick up if there's fragments. And then they pick up what's called the methylation. This is the chemistry. Okay, so the scientists figured this out in the lab, so they know the normal function of the pancreas, how all the enzymes are secreted, how they're absorbed, how they're replenished. They know the whole cycle, and they've identified these cell fragments. And with the identification of the cell fragments and knowing the environment, what does that mean? They know every step. So let's say you've eaten a piece of sugar, and now the body puts out the insulin. So the insulin now gets secreted. Well, then it has to be replaced. They know that whole mechanism. And when I say they know it, technology, guys, the artificial intelligence, the computerization, it's all called a matrix. Remember, we talked about the matrix. They'll tell you right now, based on your data that you give them, when you're going to live to. And they put that down, you know, like the prognosis, as they say. And they'll actually list in there, because of all that we know about you, your statistical analysis tells us that there's a good chance you're going to live to whatever age they pick. They can do that. The data enables them to do that. So with that data, we now, by looking at the environment and seeing what cell fragments around the DNA are there, they look at how it changes in the blood. And so they look at, it's all chemistry, guys, so they're looking whatever ingredients, byproducts that they can find for these cancer identifications. And that's how they came up with the 12 that they have a composite of. Because, again, they're very common. These are all the lymphomas, the lung cancers, you know, anything related, breast cancer, prostate cancer. These are all the top 12. And with those top 12, you go get the blood test. After you get the blood test, if they see the mutation and they see signs coupled with your history, they'll put together an analysis and they will tell you. No risk, or of these 12, this one popped up, this one popped up, this one popped up. And once again, that data then they give to you to bring to your PCP. I'm starting to get, what would I equate it to? What would I equate that became, cholesterol. Bingo. I've been practicing a long time. When I first started practicing, no one was checking cholesterols. And then all of a sudden it became the hot topic. And then everybody wanted their cholesterol checked. And everybody wanted specific parts of the cholesterol molecule checked because, and now that's the standard. You know, you get the total cholesterol, you get the LDL, the HDL, and the triglycerides. When I first started, all they got was the cholesterol. And so the data over time showed us how important it was. Well, we're beyond that with the technology. They can figure this out, and by figuring out this component, they're going to give you data. So the data on that 12, this one I just have to push. There you go. The data on the 12 positives. Is it false positive? Is a question you have to ask. And then you do what's called a workup. What is a workup? Let's say it's the pancreas. How do we find out if there's a problem with the pancreas? Obviously, the best test is an MRI. Are they going to go for an MRI because your family doctor said that your genetic testing showed that there's a mutation in the pancreas and it might be a lesion? No. But they will go for a sonogram. Now, if you have symptoms, different story. But remember, this is early detection. We're hoping to find this stuff long before you have symptoms. So with the early detection, we find the blood test is positive. We make the assumption for the workup, we get a sonogram. Sonogram negative. What do? GI doctor if my patient had symptoms. What does that mean? Early satiety. Everybody know what that is? I usually eat a whole plate of spaghetti. If I only eat half of it, my mother used to ask me if I was sick. Okay? That means you can't get it all in. You fill up quickly. Okay? That's one of the most common symptoms that we see. One of the other ones is can't eat meat. Like you used to eat a lot of meat, now you don't have a taste for the meat. Those symptoms are what I saw most in my office, and then I'd get a GI doctor. Now with what's going on, we get a positive test. Is it a false positive? We don't know. We do a workup. We do the sonogram. It's negative. I want to send them to GI, but guess what GI is saying? We're getting tons, like they're all coming in. And again, it's not a procedure. You can't do a procedure unless you have the symptoms. You follow me? Like the doctor can't say he's going to examine you and you're not going to have any pain, and he's going to do the testing that he normally does. It's called lipase, amylase. These are tests that if there's enzymes that go up in the pancreas, it shows there's disease. That's all going to be normal. But you have a genetic test. So that's the conundrum we're all in right now. Medicare since 2021 January has been under what's called ACO. And if we haven't talked about it, I'll let you know again. It's called Accountable Care Organizations. Accountable Care Organizations are the healthcare system and the insurance company sharing risk. Okay? What does that mean? For those of you who've gone to the hospital, you know that it's not the same. So when you used to go to the hospital, they did all the tests they needed in the emergency room, and then you got up to the floor. Now what happens is you don't get a bed. They keep you down in the emergency room. They do a couple different tests, but not the tests that I grew up with, if you will. Example, if a patient's in a nursing home and has a fall and it was unwitnessed, we always scan the head. They don't do that anymore. Okay, so once again, what's going to occur is we're going to get all this data, and the system's not going to be set up for what we are all used to. Remember what I started with, 1991, less than 24 hours, less than 12 hours, we had a guy diagnosed and treated for lung cancer. Can't do that anymore. So now you're going to have this information. We're going to get the sonogram. It's going to be negative. GI's balking at it, but they'll come up with something. Maybe their nurse practitioner or somebody will see the patient. And I think, again, what will happen, the one test that's the cheapest to see, is there any change in the acidity? You swallow a thing, and as you swallow it, it goes down and checks all the pH in the GI tract down to the pancreas. So I'm sure that'll be one of them. Maybe technology will advance at that end that they'll get a test like that as well. For those of you guys who have ever heard of Helicobacter, it's something that causes gastritis, and they now have that also where you just swallow a little pill. So there's different testing that can be done. So I'm sure that the data that we're going to look at that we're not all prepared for now, it's going to be a short period of time because generally somebody already has the data. You know, like I talked about, the lecture coming up is going to be robotics, if you will, and is it ethical for them to take my job, if you will? There's already 17 hospitals in the state or in the United States that are, you know, doing what they call a pilot with them. You know, so it's already happening. The fact of these changes and how they're occurring, that's why I'm talking about it so you guys understand it. Okay, so next now, let's go to, you get the 12 markers, and it shows positive, let's pick breast because that's an important one. Mammogram. World Health Organization, 2021. If no family history, they're recommending annuals to begin at age 50. Some even push in Europe for 55. Let's try to think how many. 4. I've had 4 teenagers with breast cancer. Okay? Why am I bringing it up? Because they're going to get the test, they're going to see there's a mutation, and then the process begins. You know, you got to get all this testing done. No one's going to be able to. I'm sure they're more prepared than I'm assuming. I just know what I'm seeing in my office. That's what I talked to you guys about, stuff that I see. So what I'm seeing in my office, it's already happening. It's not necessarily been as much with an early detection mutation. It's been more the medicine one. Like because of the pills and what's in the pills, and they're able to look at the sensitivities that are potentially in your body with those pills, and then they come back with the data. Remember, it's all computerized. That's what's so frustrating for me as the physician, you know, that you're not sitting with somebody who's actually talking to you, looking at your pills, reviewing everything with you, talking to you about everything. They get the information, put it in the computer, and the computer comes back saying, oh, this is only going to be 80% as effective because this is sensitive, and so you're not absorbing as much. And that's what I'm getting a lot of now. So that's why it prompted me, because this is where we are, okay? So now, because we know the breast is early, really, really high data with treatment. What does that mean? If a mammogram identifies a lesion and it's biopsied and hasn't moved out of where it's at, it's in the high 90s in terms of effectiveness of cure. Okay, that's the whole key. What the mammogram does in terms of follow-up for patients that have breast cancer, phenomenal. I've had many, many patients, because of the mammogram, have done fantastic. So I think the mammogram is still the standard that's always going to be there. But what's going to happen is when they do these 12 and they identify the mutation, once again, the only way to know if it's a cancer is biopsy. And that's where the insurance companies are balking, because they don't have, like, they're going to look and see if they're not finding anything on the mammogram, they're not finding anything on the sonogram. They're not going to want to, but I'm sure they're going to have to do MRIs. And again, if it's not even identified there, then what they have to do, they go by quadrants, and then they try to predict. And again, it's not exact at the moment, but it's coming. They're going to get to that information. And once again, that's where we're going to be, where because of the recommendations, and remember what I told you, I had a 16, was the youngest. They called it a scar carcinoma. They were doing, what do they call those things? Earrings, I guess, for lack of a better word. You know, piercings. There you go. They were doing all these piercings and all this other stuff. But that's the culture, you know. They're getting these sleeves of, I was recently at a wedding, you know, a friend of my wife's, and I was shocked. The girl came down in a white dress. She had 2 sleeves on her own. I mean, I was like, whoosh. You know, I just, glad my daughter didn't have any, you know, yet anyhow. But my whole point is that's the culture, that's the things that are happening, and so what we're seeing early. And that's why I'm bringing this up. If that's your daughter, your granddaughter, your niece, your whatever, if you find out genetically they may have something, you're definitely going to want to do something about it. And we're not prepared, and it's already happening, okay? All right, the other one I want to get to is a big one. Colorectal. Cologuard. I heard a chuckle. You cannot imagine how many, well, what's the number? I'll give you a number. I'd guess at least 60 referrals from Cologuard. So far, thank God, 0 cancers, okay? But once again, what's happening is asymptomatic, no complaints, and Cologuard comes back positive. Well, once again, what they don't tell you is if you are like me and you like rare meat, you know, and you happen to have a steak and then you get that thing done, that could be positive. Like, there's different things that can cause it to be positive, but the commercial doesn't tell you that. And so what's happening is those are the things that are getting pushed to the insurance companies, you know. And so what happens? Someone comes into my office, shows me a positive Cologuard, you know, you send them to the GI. You know, GI initially, they were doing fine with it, but now they've been, like, it's a big influx of people. And fortunately, the data is showing it's a great, I mean, hey, if you find 1 out of 50, you found one. So that's wonderful. But of the ones I've sent, fortunately, there hasn't been a positive cancer yet. But again, the reason I bring it up is bowel habit changes. The last 2 colon cancers, and believe it or not, they were both, no, one was the end of, it was October. I was going to say I thought both were in 2023. Patients I've had for a number of years, and I always go through any change in the bowel habits, any constipation, and there were no's, you know. And when we found what we found and we pursued more discussion about it, it was like, well, I just thought it was what I ate, or I just thought it was X, Y, and Z. Bottom line, guys, is any change is a change, and that's the most important thing. We're talking new fashion or new technology with the detection. We're talking about the old way. We caught everybody. Of the ones I showed you, we caught everybody. If you saw the gynecologist and had your rectal exam, that was enough to see whether there was colorectal problems at all. They also examined your breast. They also ordered the mammogram, and they also gave you pap and pelvic, so we picked it all up. If you're seeing your GP, they better look in your mouth because that's another area. Skin, like I said, I always talk to patient anything, and I check around. So generally, those are the way we caught things. Now with the new technology where it's at, it's all changing. Be prepared for the change. And as we look at the one, bowel habit changes, I do believe that if patients paid attention and not try to play it back from what they ate and assume it was related to the eating and definitely the nutritional component, look more at have they changed. What does that mean? The stool composite from firm to liquid. And of course, I don't disagree that what you eat and especially drink can have an impact on it. And so I'm not saying that if you haven't had any of Aunt Mary's special soup since last year and you had it and you've had it change, I'm not worried about that. But if you're on a normal routine and your routine is you move your bowels once a day or you move your bowels once a week, whatever that happens to be, if that changes, talk to your doctor. Because so many times the other patient, there was a weight loss that we noticed is how we pursued that one. And once again, it was, well, I did what you told me. I quit eating wheat. And so I assumed that that's why she was losing weight because that's what we talked about. And as it turned out, there was she felt subtle. In hindsight, maybe it was, but some of the changes that she was noticing, she was getting filled up quicker and she was bloated a lot. And so again, I don't want everybody to feel, oh, I got to run to the doctor tomorrow because I felt more bloated than I had the week before. And yet at the same time, don't discount things that it's not something. Please pay attention and make sure when your doctor asks you specifics, especially about the bowel, people don't like to talk about it. Make sure you go through any change because it's important. What happens now again is what's the workup if we have a positive blood test? Guaiac test. So Guaiac test is negative. The genetic test is positive. What do? Again, technology-wise, colonoscopy is the best, most advanced way to see the entire colon. Once again, we're checking it and seeing it early. What does that mean? No symptoms. Might not be a polyp. There might not be anything in the GI tract at all. I'm bringing it up to you to make sure, what do? I'm telling you, I've been doing this stuff 33 years, guys, and I don't have the experience with this. I don't have my flip-flop phone on me. I'm not computer literate. So the technology has advanced where things are. Go to a genetic expert. It's the most important thing you can do, guys, because you don't want to go down a path that you don't know and understand. And I'm telling you right out, I don't know. I understand the technology. Don't get me wrong. But like I told you, within 12 hours, I diagnosed and treated a patient with cancer in 1991, and I couldn't do the same thing today. I'm restricted in the time frame that I have. So getting the information and getting the data, if the technology goes fast, there's going to be people out there that are going to tout the same thing. You have to get somebody that's genetically certified. So you have to make sure, and like I said, I'll give the name to Karen. So she has that information. So if you're going to do it, and I'm saying do, I'm not saying not to. Definitely, I'm all for early detection. So get it done. Just make sure, what are you going to do with the information? Obviously, share it with your PCP, but have that genetic, I think they go by genetic counseling. That might be the terminology. But they have to have a BS degree in whatever their specialty was for that degree. And then from there, they do, I think it's a 2-year internship with the genetic counseling. And it's college. It's all college, and then you go into the hospital. That's how she met her husband. He was doing his residency at Cleveland Clinic, and she went in to do the rotation. She lived in Pittsburgh, went to school in Pittsburgh, went up there for the rotation. But again, you want the professional because they'll guide you through the process, and they'll be able to interpret everything better as well. I'm learning about it. That's why we're talking about it, but I don't have that expertise. And once again, they'll be able to guide you through. It still comes back to family. So you see a mutation in the gene. Was anybody in the family with X, Y, and Z? Let's go back to colorectal cancer. Anybody in the family with colorectal cancer? Anybody in the family have problems with their eating habits? Because don't forget, back 50 years ago, no one talked about cancer. Aunt Mary died from consumption. I remember asking my father, Dad, what's consumption? I'll tell you when. That was his favorite line. I'll tell you when you get older. Never told me. All right, guys, so now what I want to make sure of is everybody understands early detection. Big yes. That's what we want. You want the early detection. I'm still old school, so PAP, pelvic, seeing your doctor, women, mammogram. And don't forget, ladies, your gynecologist and you have a relationship. If your gynecologist tells you, say you had a hysterectomy or whatever, and they tell you, oh, you don't have to come back, it's nothing to worry about. But don't let them tell you don't get a mammogram because you're 70 years old. I don't buy any of that stuff. The cancers, I find a lot of cancers in a lot of different ages of a lot of different people. And I still believe that the best way to approach it is the early detection is the best. So mammograms for the breast, you still want to get done. You and your gynecologist will have your own relationship, whatever they recommend. But it's important to make sure the early detection, I'm all for. But the main thing for this to work is follow-up. So whatever they want to see you back, you have to go back. Women are pretty good. Men are tough. Like, I'll tell them they have to go see the guy or the urologist to get their prostate checked, and then they'll come back and say, Doc, he took biopsies. It's like, but they were negative. Yeah, but he took biopsies. You know where he had to go to get those? And it's like, well, you got to follow up with him. No, I'm never going back there again. That hurt. And again, they won't. They end up not going back. We at least check the PSAs, but it still comes back. Please, this is the most important because cancers caught early, I'll say early, definitely better outcome. Unfortunately, the genetics hasn't mastered once and for all cure, okay? So many of my patients, I just saw one last week. She actually had mastectomies to prevent the recurrence, and she had bone and went to the bone. Thank God she's responded to the chemo. And that's the whole point. You have to have an oncologist. Please remember I'm telling you this stuff, guys. Specialists today are vitally important because of the technology, the changes, and their ability. I tell my patients that'll come in, I love injecting joints. I love doing procedures. I started out doing surgery. I switched from surgery to medicine because they went to laparoscopes. All my uncles were surgeons. I used to love feeling the organs. You'd open a patient up, you'd feel the liver, you'd feel everything. And all of a sudden now they're going to, you're peeking in a little thing. I didn't like that. But the bottom line comes back to you have to make sure that you understand everything that you're hearing. And if you don't, you get that information explained to you by your PCP, because that's the person that knows you the best. When it comes to the female organs, your gynecologist knows you, so you guys talk about it. All right, now, for the early detection and follow-up, because it can recur, oncologist. Why oncologist? I lost a good friend of mine, Johnny Herb. If anybody's from Ross Township, if you're on Babcock Boulevard and you go up to the stadium, it's called John Herb Stadium. Johnny was a good friend of mine. I smiled because these guys were all cops. And long story short, a friend of mine was he took the calls that came in for him. I forget, the controller. And so he asked me if I wanted to play softball with him. They needed a second baseman. I played second base. So we were the only two non-cops on the team. So after the game, I'm walking to my car, and they say, "Oh, Doc, come on over." So we go over to this cop's car. He opens it up. It's full of beer. That was what he confiscated through the week off the kids. So I have a beer, and I start to walk away. And he says, "Hey, Doc, have another one." I said, "Whoa, I'll get woozy." "That's okay. You get pulled over. Call me." It was amazing. But Johnny Herb was just a special guy. He had colon cancer, and the surgeon told him he got everything. And I told him, because he came back to play softball, I told him, get an oncologist. "Nah, surgeon told me I got everything." "Doesn't matter, Johnny, you can come back. See an oncologist." And Johnny died young, guys. He was only in his 50s. And it's just so sad because they did get it all. But it could rear its head again. The oncologist sees thousands of cancer cases a month. And for every one they see, they read about it. So they have such tremendous information about all the drugs, all the disease, all the stuff we're talking about. They know inside and out. So again, guys, you have to make sure anytime get the oncologist. So what would I say now? Back to this early detection. The 12 tests that you get, if you get them, and any of them are positive, first talk to your PCP. If the PCP doesn't bring it up, ask about a genetic. I'll put counselor. There's another word. She'll be mad at me if she's not really a counselor, and that's what I'm calling her. Okay, so that's your first step. If you're not satisfied, and what do I mean by satisfied? That if they're like me telling you that, well, I don't have that much experience, we haven't had that many cases, or if they're talking like that at all, thank them. But then what you do is you call the oncologist. Now, how do you have to pick the oncologist? What's your insurance? But I highly recommend, if anybody's going to take these steps, get yourself an oncologist before you do the test. And like I tell all my patients, you pick a orthopedic surgeon, because unfortunately you may fall. You pick a cardiologist and a cardiovascular surgeon, because unfortunately you may have a heart attack and need to have bypass surgery. You definitely pick a general surgeon. You pick a oncologist, the cancer doctor, like we're talking about. And if you smoke, you pick a pulmonary doctor. Why? If you go to the emergency room and they see you in the emergency room and they come back to the desk, they'll say, hip fracture, room 5, she doesn't have an orthopedic surgeon. And that chart goes down. Where does that chart go? In the corner. If they come out there and they lay that chart down, hip fracture, room 5, Dr. Jones, the secretary, is calling Dr. Jones at that moment. So everybody follow me. You want that. And again, where do you get it? Get it from your PCP, get it from your family, get it from your friends, but pick those doctors. And I'm emphasizing for early cancer detection, you need an oncologist. And pick them based upon friends, family, PCP. I pick them based on, used to be, I had one I went with all the time because I've been doing this so long. And then what happens, you have to go network to network. So it depends on what network you're in. But I have the different, I use Dr. Long down at AGH. I use Dr. Roger Senin, funny story with Dr. Roger Senin at UPMC. And the one I love is Dr. Venus Hadid. She was my resident whenever I was at St. Francis. Unfortunately, it's a closed hospital. And I look on the sheet and they say, oh, there's a new doctor coming, Dr. Hadid. And I said, I wonder if that's her. And I forget where she was from, but another country, so she had an accent. And she always called me Matthew. So I'm in the doctor's lounge doing something, and all of a sudden I hear these high heels. Matthew, is that you? And it was her. And she still looked the same way she did when she was in a residency. But that's how I pick the ones I pick. So that's how I'm telling you your PCP would have that same, what I just told you, they will have. And you pick who they know, or that you pick, and the one I just told you are great, or you pick who friends and family tell you. But you want to have that information so that God forbid anything happens to you, you go in the hospital, you use that name because that's how it will work. But then also if you get any of this back, you want the genetic counselor through your PCP, because I now have one, like the contact we use, because I'm getting so many calls. If they don't, that's okay. But what you want to do then is you check with the oncologist. So you pick whoever it happens to be, and you call in, and you use my name no matter where you're going or whoever you're talking to. You were at a lecture with Dr. Coppola, and he suggested if I get any genetic material in that's suggesting that I have a cancer, that I go to the oncologist first. They'll respect that and understand it. You may talk to the nurse practitioner first because they have some sick people, but they'll definitely get you in and go through this with you. They have those capabilities. So again, guys, please make sure the way I did this and why I did it was because I told you what I saw, and it's amazing because my daughter does this. I laugh. I didn't even know. I have 6 children, 3 girls and 3 boys, so my wife got the girls. Well, they all went out of state far away. I had the boys. The furthest one was Rochester, New York. The other one went to La Roche, and the other one went to Pitt, so I had it easy. But what happened was my daughter had me come up and speak. It's terrible I can't think of names. Must be early Alzheimer's, guys. I'm trying to think. Hers began with a B, the school that she went to, but it was up in Connecticut. And long story short, it was a new class of, first class of physician assistants graduating. And when she told the professor that I was independent, they wanted an independent opinion, and it was awesome. They had an administrator, a pharmacy representative, and a businessman, that sold medical equipment, and me. And they called on me last. And I said to the girls, I said, well, most of them were girls, the physician, I said, everything they just said, I don't believe anything they said at all. And they all start clapping. And I said to them, this is the most important thing I'm going to teach you today. Wash your hands. And then I gave my whole talk, because that's the most important thing, is you can't spread disease that you're trying to treat. And unfortunately, when I get students, they don't wash their hands. So that's what I beat them up for first. All right, guys, but again, what I want to make sure, supply, what's the demand? This genetics, through the roof. Supply, what am I telling you? For the heck of it, next time you guys see your PCP, tell them what we talked about, and you're thinking of the test, and do they have genetic counselors that they use? Just for the heck of it. But my point is, it's taken off, guys. And I'm all for it. I'm definitely all for it. But what I'm seeing is what I'm telling you. I can't get a person that I know they have cancer. I've seen too much of it. I can't even get them in to see people. And this hasn't even started yet. Once this takes off, that's what I see. It's going to back up. And then what's going to happen is people are going to see it, and so they might try to sell you something. And that's why, remember what I'm telling you, your PCP guides you through the genetic counselor. If they don't have a system that sounds good to you, you contact the oncologist. You get a name for that oncologist, because I'm telling you guys, in the good old days, you had to know the person or the doc wouldn't take you. Like if it take the call from the emergency room, oh, we have Mrs. Jones here, and she says you're her orthopedic surgeon. I don't know Mrs. Jones. That was the docs 50 years ago. Now, it's groups. So all they know is that someone called and used the name, so they're going to want to see you. I guarantee you, no one's going to, deny you to have any care of any kind. And they definitely, the oncologist knows everything we just talked about, and they can give you data. Because remember, the matrix isn't perfect, guys. It is not perfect. And the early detection, I'm definitely in agreement with. But once again, I don't want you to get caught in the middle of all this stuff, not understanding it, and then end up going down different paths with not having the data. It's not 100%. They're picking up a mutation in a gene off of probably a protein that they're finding in the blood, and that's what's concerning them to the point that this shows us, there's 86% chance that this mutation could be such and so. That's why you make sure the genetic counselor guides you, oncologist if there's any problems. Good. One thing I want to share with you guys that happened to me yesterday. I thought this was really neat because I was with Joanne in the morning. I did convince her to come back in a capacity. Later, you guys will see her again on campus. So Joanne and I had just parked the car long before all this was built. I think they were just building up on the nursing home. And as we were walking to the front door, someone fell in their wheelchair and it went over the curb. Well, I had a bad shoulder, okay? Long story short, I hurt my shoulder, and it was like one of those things that I didn't even lift if I didn't have to. But it was reflexive. I picked them up, and my pain went away. It was unbelievable. So I'm with Joanne yesterday. I can't say exactly because they've changed the place around, but I'm saying darn near close to exactly where it happened. I have a bad knee, right? I stood up. I go like this. I go, "Hey, Joe, you remember this curb?" And she goes, "Yeah, that's where that patient fell, and we picked him up." And as I start to walk in, ask the secretary. She goes, "What are you doing?" And I'm going like this. She goes, "What are you doing, Dr. Coppola?" I said, "My knee doesn't hurt." It was unbelievable. And so I told Joe, I don't know if, it's common knowledge so I can tell you, but Joanne was a nun, and then she left the nunnery. So I said, "You got to come back, hon. I'm even feeling better just hanging around with you." That was my funny story. All right, guys, I leave you with, please understand. Technology and data is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. But remember what I told you before. Be careful what you say and who you say it to. Because so many times I'm seeing, no, they didn't get therapy because they refused it in the hospital. And what happened? They came in to take you down to therapy at 7:15. You hadn't even gone to the bathroom yet. So you told them, "Can you come back later?" What do they write? Patient refused. Everybody follow me? So please be cognizant. It's flying, guys. The technology's flying. They know everything about everything, and all the information is out there. Take advantage of it. I'm all for doing these 12 blood tests to check on all those top cancers. I'm all for that. But make sure that with the data, don't let it take you down a path. Remember what I said, there's false negatives and there's also false positives. This is blood tests. They get into the environment of the organ that we're talking about. It's a protein that they will check on because the DNA is a protein. And with that protein, they set up it's called a antibody-antigen reaction. So that protein that they're looking for, if it's in your blood, it lights up. But once again, is it 100%? No. So that's what you have to be cognizant of. So get them done. If there's anything there and you have a question, in fact, check with your PCP before you even do it is what I'd advise, guys. Don't call them up. Just wait for your next appointment. And if you're in a hurry, there's 5 companies that I saw, and the data on all 5 of them is federally regulated, so I would say they're all reputable. And I know there's 2 in Pittsburgh. So if it becomes something that you want to do and you're going to do it, just make sure your PCP has a genetic counselor. If they do not have one, or the conversation you have with them didn't make you feel comfortable, then whoever you pick for your oncologist, you call their office. Use my name. Say, "Dr. Coppola was lecturing us, and he told us that if any of this stuff comes back positive, you got to see an oncologist." And they'll definitely bring you in. Like I said, it might not be right away because they have sick patients coming in, or maybe you'll see their physician extender beforehand, but they'll definitely get you in their network. And it's definitely what you want to do. Please make sure, no matter what we thought about today, I'm not knocking the early detection. What bothers me is the matrix, the artificial intelligence, all the data and all the information they're gathering, but we're slowing down fixing things. And it's just frustrating to me. I had it happen to me 3 times this week already. My patients could not get their testing done because I would write chest x-ray, shortness of breath. They want the code. You know, in my flip-top phone, I can't get the code. So now they're making me buy an iPhone just to be able to get the code. You know, and again, I'll do it, but it drives me crazy that the system's changing and we're not being able to get these things done as fast as we used to. Good, guys. Sorry I was late. I'm still blaming Joanne. Any questions? All right, guys. Pay attention. I'm not sure what next month is. I'd have to look, but make sure you're at the robotics one. Yes? Sure.
Are all those 12 tests in one test, or do you have to get 12 separate tests?
One test.
One
One
test.
test.
And you recommend the Cleveland Clinic for that?
I recommend the Cleveland Clinic for what I know of counseling in the area. The Cleveland Clinic genetic counseling is top. I'm not saying go there for the blood test. I'd say pick anybody in Pittsburgh, but especially if it comes back positive in any way, shape, or form, you need a genetic counselor. And I'll give Karen the name. This girl got married. I don't know what her maiden name is, but I'll find out. Good. Any other questions, guys? All right, I got to leave you with, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Joanne Betts is my nurse practitioner of 33 years. And she left because of COVID, and I've been trying to bribe her back. So what she said jokingly to me, about 2 months ago was, all right, what do I have to do to go to a Steeler game? Because I always take her to the Steeler games. I have tickets. And I said, 60 hours a week should do it. You know, so that's who Joanne is. She's a personal friend as well as she ran my practice for the whole time she was there. And for those that know her, know she's one of these kind of people that can tell you off and you're still smiling because you don't even realize what she just did because she doesn't. I'd have to leave you with my joke that I heard from a 93-year-old patient. And I'm not ripping on the age. I just laughed because she was so funny. New patient that I had, and we're talking. And again, she keeps reminding me, guys, so I have to bring it up to everybody. Laughter is the best medicine, okay? And I always ask, when I have somebody that just blows me away for their age and how well they're doing what they're doing, she says, Dr. Coppola, you know laughter is the best medicine. I said, yeah, I've heard that. And she goes, so I have a joke for you. I said, okay. So she says, husband and wife sit down for dinner, and the wife says to the husband, I have a gynecology appointment tomorrow at 11:30. You got to take me. And without stopping his eating, he said, I'm golfing. You know? And she goes, it's very important for you to take me to the gynecologist. What if I have something wrong and I could die? I'm golfing. Well, you have to take me. I can't drive there by myself. You have to take me down. He said, Uber. And he leaves to go golfing, okay, next day. So he calls her after the 18th hole. She hangs up on him. So he decides to go to the 19th hole. For those of you guys don't know, that's the bar. So he goes to the bar, has a couple drinks. He comes home, gets his food, sits down. She's giving him the cold treatment, not talking at all, not even looking at him. So finally he yells out, hey, so what did that gynecologist think of your 54-year-old ass? She said, I left him at home. All right, I have to leave you with this. This is a good one. My sister works for me now. So I said to her, you don't need to come Saturday. These are all patients I've had for like so many years. They take care of themselves, right? So she goes, okay, wait, I don't want to say the lady's name. I'll just say AB. And I go, is she coming tomorrow? She goes, I think. I said, please check because we missed her last appointment. And she goes, okay, let me look. She goes, oh, my God, her birthday's 1/4/23. I go, yeah, she's 100, okay? I come out because I had to bring my own patients. She's sitting in the chair beside her son. As I come out of the door to get her, I'm telling you guys, she jumped up, right? And as I come over, I shake the son's hand. She walks past me. We're heading to the scale because you have to get on the scale first. As she gets up to the scale, I can't do it. I'd have to hold on. She lifts a foot without holding on and takes her shoe off. And then lifts the other foot without holding on, takes her shoe off. And then she gets up all by herself. She gets up on the scale, puts her arms down. And as I come over to start, she goes, wait, and gets off. She was in like a suit. She takes the jacket off, puts it down, Gets up, 125. She goes, damn, gained 2 pounds. I was blown away that, A, she'd care about 2 pounds, and she beat me literally down the hall and could do all that stuff without moving. Just amazed me, guys. So I'm definitely of belief now. As I started practice many years ago, I thought, I don't think I want to live to 100. I wouldn't mind with the 100-year-olds I have now because they're doing very, very well. So thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next month. And I will be early. I will be early next month.